Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another very special Pioneer deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about Simic Sea Monsters. I am very excited to talk about this list today. As always, at the end of the video, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the deck? Is there a specific sea monster that I did not include in the deck that I definitely should have? Or do you have suggestions for upcoming videos? Just let me know in the comment section. So real quick before I hop into this video, I have been wanting to do this deck tech for so long, and I'll be honest with you, the issue was I couldn't find the right list. I mean, there's so many different cards that I tried in this deck and didn't include, and like it was so hard to build this deck because there's so many, I don't want to say so many good sea monsters in this deck, but it was just hard to find like the right curve and the right creatures and everything. It was really, really tough. So that's why this deck took so long to get out, but I'm very excited to share this list with you. So, okay, let's go and hop into it real quick here. So I've got to be a little bit of a jerk here. I got to keep it in suspense. I can't show the sea monsters we're playing yet, but I'm going to show you how we're going to play them. We're playing Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, and Wolfwillow Haven as our main cheap ways of ramping. We're also playing 4 Growth Spiral, 4 Beanstalk Giant, and 2 Kiora Behemoth Beckoner. So these are just the best ramp cards that we can play in this deck. I do like the Beanstalk Giant for a couple different reasons, which I will explain later in the video, but it's just a really good way to ramp and then also have something to do later in the game. We have a big creature that we can play, which is nice. And the Kiora is also really good and flavorful for this deck because, spoiler alert, we're also playing another Kiora in this deck, but it is not a Planeswalker. So let's go and hop into it. What big creatures are we actually playing in this sea monster deck? It's really simple. So we are playing 3 copies of Kiora, Sovereign of the Deep. We're also playing 2 copies of Hullbreaker Horror and 2 Coma Cosmos Serpent. So Kiora, Sovereign of the Deep, I think is the best card in the deck. Whenever you cast a Kraken, Leviathan, Octopus, or Serpent spell from your hand, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that spell's mana value. You may cast a spell with mana value less than X from among them without paying its mana cost and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. I love this card. Kiora is just sweet. Just being able to get free value from playing our other Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents is fantastic. Spoiler alert, we also don't have any Octopus. I'm just letting you know, Octopus are generally not very good in the game, which, you know, sorry if I spoiled that a little bit for you. So the other thing is we're also playing Krakens, Leviathans, and Serpents, which is cool. We're playing one of each of them. There is one more that is not being featured on the slide, which we will talk about in a second. Spoiler alert too, all of the big ones that we're playing are 7. So we're not going to be like chaining different Krakens or anything like that. The main thing is just getting additional value. So we cast, for instance, a Hullbreaker Horror. Boom, we look at the top 7 cards and we can cast any of those cards. You know, we cast a Beanstalk Giant, we cast something else for free, it doesn't matter. We get some additional value from that. It's definitely very, very good. Huge fan of Kiora in the deck. So, Hullbreaker Horror and Coma Cosmos Serpent, simply put, are just some of the best Krakens and Serpents in the game. It's really what it is. Hullbreaker Horror can easily take over the game all by itself. Coma, very, very similar as well. That's where we're playing this. This card was an absolute menace when it was in Standard, and Coma is also really, really good in Commander because it's at the beginning of each upkeep. You get the coil token, which is really, really good. So the other thing we gotta talk about is, okay, so we have all these ramp cards, we have like these big, sweet, flashy Simic creatures that we can play, but you know, what if we're just playing against aggro? What if we're playing against other decks that go super wide and we can't actually cast any of those? Well, that's the thing is I thought about that. We're also playing 4 copies of Whelming Wave and 4 copies of Scourge of Fleets. So Whelming Wave is kind of like a blue Rathagon. Return all creatures to their owner's hands except for Krakens, Leviathans, Octopuses, and Serpents. Yes, our elves do get bounced to our hand. Doesn't matter. We can quite easily recast them. It also does bounce Kiora, that's the one that's like a little unfortunate, but it still doesn't matter. We get to keep all of our big fatties in play. So Scourge of Fleets, originally when I built this deck, I didn't even have any of these in the list, but I decided that I wanted to be better against other aggro decks. And Scourge of Fleets is the perfect answer. When it enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. That's the key. We just keep bouncing their creatures. They get a big board presence. Boom, Scourge of Fleets. X equals 3. Bounce all your creatures. Boom, they start building things back up again. Play another one. Bounce their whole board. Get in with all of our Krakens. That's what we're trying to do with Scourge of Fleets. Just keep bouncing all of their creatures, which is fantastic. So the other thing that's tricky is we need to have islands in play. Islands is the type that matters. And there's obviously no fetch lands in this format, which is a perfect transition. Let's go ahead and talk about the lands that we're playing in this deck. So, right off the bat, boom, 4 Breeding Pool, 4 Hedge Maze, and 4 Spara's Headquarters as our main dual lands in this deck. So obviously, we need the Forest Island typing because we need to be able to play all of our green early ramp and then also play all of our big Leviathans and such, you know, later in the game. And islands matter because of Scourge of Fleets, so that's why we're playing all these specifically. So Spara's Headquarters is only in the deck because it is the next best one with the typing. Unfortunately, the bicycle lands that they did at Amonkhet, we didn't have a Simic one, which is really unfortunate. We only got half of the cycle, so that's why we're not playing that. There's no Tango land that they call it from Battle for Zendikar, where, you know, it takes 2 to tango, 2 or more basics. We didn't get that. So really, Spara's Headquarters is just our next best option just because it has the cycling 3 on there. It's not 100% necessary for the deck. You can substitute it with something else, which we'll talk about that later, but that's why we're playing this specific suite. The Breeding Pool and the Hedge Maze are definitely the main ones that you want to play. And then rounding out our lands, we're also playing 4 Yavimaya Coast, 2 Lair of the Hydra, and 1 Boseiju. I specifically chose Yavimaya Coast just because we play so many different lands in this deck, and I do like that Yavimaya Coast can come into play tapped at any point in the game. That's pretty much why we're just playing it. That's self-explanatory. And then rounding out our lands, we are also playing 5 islands and 1 forest. And as our spicy basic lands of the day, I'll be honest with you, I tried to find some that kind of fit the theme, which you got the island there with the storm, you know, it's really, really cool. The forest, I really had a hard time finding it. Honestly, I just really, really like this artwork. That's simply put, that's why I picked it. So it's just kind of funny anyways. So those are all the lands that we're playing in this, but don't go anywhere yet. We still have to talk about our sideboard as well as some budget alternatives that we can play in this deck. So the sideboard is relatively straightforward. We're going to want some graveyard hate. I highly recommend playing either Grafdigger's Cage and or Soul Guide Lantern. Both fantastic. There's a lot of graveyard decks going around in the metagame right now. We need to be ready for those. Counter spells. I personally would recommend Mystical Dispute because you want to know what? Everyone else that's playing Mystical Dispute is going to be bringing in Mystical Dispute against us because guess what? All of our big guys that we're playing are blue, so we're going to want our own Mystical Disputes, but you could also play some number of Stubborn Denials as well. I really like those. Rapid Hybridization. Simply put, we need some removal in our sideboard for those quick aggro decks, and Rapid Hybridization is, I think, the best one. It's 1 blue, destroys any creature. Sure, they do get a 3/3 lizard as a compensation for that, but guess what? We're just going to bounce it anyways. Who cares? 1 blue, destroy your creature. Doesn't even matter. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Stormtide Leviathan. I currently have 1 in my sideboard. I didn't put it in the main because of this reason. I'll just go ahead and show the card. I rarely show sideboard cards in this, but I just wanted everyone who doesn't know what this card is to know. So 8 mana, 8/8 with Island Walk. All lands are islands in addition to their other types. Creatures without flying or Island Walk can't attack. So I didn't put it in the main board because if we have Stormtide Leviathan in play, this means that we can't attack with any of our other creatures because they don't have flying or Island Walk. The reason I have this in the sideboard is because there is a world against some decks, they cannot answer this. If you're playing against mono red, and unless they're playing like a, you know, like, Slick Shot Show Off or something, there's a chance they just can't attack the rest of the game. You know, mono white humans, like, sure, they do have some removal in their deck, but you want to know what? If we bounce all their creatures, like their Brutal Cathars or something, there's a chance that they can't win the game if this is in play. So that's why I'm just playing the 1 sneaky Stormtide Leviathan in the sideboard because, again, in some matchups, we can just win the game out front, which is just really, really cool. So that's why I'm playing the 1 copy of Stormtide Leviathan. And then the last thing we got to talk about is the budget options for this deck, which is super simple. Play the budget Simic lands. There's the one from Dominar United, which is, it comes in tapped. It's just vanilla. It has the typing. And then there's also the one in Kaldheim, which is the exact same thing, but it's the snow version of that. Just play the budget Simic lands. That's all you have to do. That's the only budget thing you can do for this deck. Sure, you could cut like Coma, or you could cut the Hullbreaker Horror, but they're really, really good, and they're not very pricey. That's the other thing. I mean, sure, you could put in like Shipbreaker Kraken or something like that, or Trauma Kratos, but those cards are not going to be as good as Coma and Hullbreaker Horror, so do keep that in mind. The last thing we got to talk about, the current list as it stands is only $247 US, which is relatively cheap for a Pioneer deck. The entire cost of it is in the dual lands, I promise you. Just by playing all of the budget dual lands and cutting the Boseiju, we were able to get it down to 62 US dollars, which is incredibly cheap for a Pioneer deck. And again, you know, the breeding pool I would say is the most important of those, but the hedge maze in the other and Sparrow's headquarters is really just a quality of life improvement. It's not 100% necessary for the deck. I just wanted to be very, very clear with that. But, you know, if you don't play the Scourge of Fleets, you could cut some of those, but once again, like, Scourge of Fleets is so important against those fast aggro decks, just being able to bounce everything, or even not even the slow, you know, the fast aggro decks, like against the mid-range decks that play Shield, just boom, bouncing all their creatures is absolutely fantastic. So let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about this deck? I've been wanting to post this for so long, and I'm very happy I was finally able to do it. So let me know in the comment section below if you have a deck that's somewhat similar to this. I know I have one in Commander, which is very similar to this, which is part of the reason I wanted to share this for Pioneer. So that takes us to the end of the video here. Thanks so much for watching. The deck lists are in the description below if you'd like to check them out for yourself. Huge shout out to our channel members, Ralph, Matt, Arcadius, Ray, Gary, and Zarwanoki. If you're interested in being a channel member, it's only $1 US a month. You get access to the exclusive Discord as well as other features here on the channel. So I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one.